In the last video we saw how do we create a Docker container from our package, and then we realized that we were not able to use it. So let me explain that a little bit. In a true production environment, your databases will have a address that will have either a proper domain name, like if you are using an internal database within Amazon, they will actually give you a proper name that you can resolve using DNS. So you can just use that name, or it will be a public IP address or a name that you can directly put it in your application.properties and use it. The problem happens when we are doing our development. In the case of development, we normally use localhost, which is not a routable address. So what we have to do is we have to do a little bit of setup around the Docker to make sure that that particular so if you see here, what we're trying to do is we will run MySQL in one Docker container, Postgres in another Docker container, and our application would try to use them directly. So we want to make sure that the connectivity across three containers is established. Okay, so let's get started. The very first thing that we need to do is create a MySQL instance in a container. So to do that, we can just say docker run. This is the name that we have given to MySQL, tutorial-mysql, and the root password is also given as an environment variable, which is tutorial root 123. So now if I run it, it creates a container. Now let's do a bash inside that container. For that you can use docker exec command, and from here now we run MySQL and we give the password. So now we are inside the MySQL. Now we need to create the tables that we need. Basically these should be just the copy of table that we already had. So basically we just have one table called user. So first we create the database. So the database that we have been using is video tutorial. So we just create the same name. You can give other name, but whatever name you give, it should be an application property. Then we create a user. Create user. At localhost identified by video tutorial 123. And then we grant all the permissions. So this MySQL is now set. Now let's do the same thing for Postgres. So we run a Postgres instance. So this is the and here also the root password is tutorial 123. Basically not the root password but the admin password in case of Postgres. So we run it again, then we do bash inside that, and Postgres by default gives admin permission to Postgres user, so we SU to that user, then we do PGSQL, and we are within the root. So now we create a database, create database. Now this database called data stream, and then we change the database to data stream. Now within this we just need a sequence. Create user data stream with password data stream 123. So the user is created. So let's create the sequence, and the sequence is create sequence Hibernate sequence start 1 and grant all on to. So now let's create the time series table, which is the other table that we are using. Create table time series. First is ID, big int, not null, primary key, comma, ts, timestamp, key, varchar 64, value, so the table is created. We can see the structure. So now we have both of the database up and running. Now we have to create a network. So we go back to our host machine and say create a network called tutorial network. It is already existing because I had created it some time back. So let's delete it so that we can create it again. So now we create a new network. Now we have to add both of these databases into that network. So we connected MySQL into this. Now we connect Postgres to this. And now we basically need our application, and we run it and connect it into the same network. So before we do that, we have to make some small change into our application. So let's bring our application in. This is our application. And now you would remember the service name that we had given when we created those Docker containers, basically the container name. Rather than using localhost, we will use that name. So in case of MySQL, it is tutorial MySQL, and in case of Postgres, it is tutorial Postgres. So with these two things, now we are pointing to those containers. And now let's bring back our shell, and we run the, first we build, so we can build the application that we are running. So our application is built, and then we just run it. Yeah. So once we run it like this, it will be part of the same network. So we got some error here. Okay, so we have to give the permission for the time series table as well, which we did not give. So let's go to Postgres again. So we grant it to time series. Now let's run our application again. Okay, it seems to have started. So now we bring it down for a moment by doing Control C. So it doesn't go down with Control C if you run it like this. You actually have to do Docker stop. So we say Docker PS. If you see, there are 3 applications that are running. Now we can say Docker stop tutorial/tutorial. Oh, it didn't take the name. His name is some Adorim Banak. So we give that name and it should stop it. Yeah. Now what do we do is we run another command to see what happened to our network that we created. So to do that, you can do Docker network inspect tutorial net, and now you can see what has happened to it. Here we have a network definition, there is a ID, there is a subnet gateway, and then if you see, it is showing both the containers. If I run our application container also, let's say I run it here, Docker run. Yeah, so let's give it a name as well. Okay, the tutorial name does not allow /, so we give tutorial dash application. So we ran our container again. Now we can see Docker network inspect tutorial net, and if you see, now it will show us 3 things. See, there's a tutorial Postgres, tutorial MySQL, and tutorial application. And the beauty of it is now we don't have to worry about the IP addresses. We could just use the application name to access these hosts. And this way you could use this Docker containers in the dev work, or even in case of a smaller deployment. In the larger deployment, generally databases are, the databases themselves will have public addresses, but even then, if you have a microservices architecture with multiple applications, rather than using this complicated way of figuring out what is the IP address, you could just use the application name, and that makes it so much better. Now let's just test it whether our application is up and running. To do that, I run Postman. So here is our Postman. First we run manage info. We got authentication failure because I am using your old auth key. So let's do authenticate again, and we are authenticating with admin here. So we got a new auth token, and we run info again, change the header, we go and change the key auth token. So now if you see, it's running here, and we can run another endpoint, let's say metrics. So you see all these metrics are coming in. So you can see here now you have a full-fledged working concept of how to build Docker containers, how to run an application within Docker containers. Of course, there are many more options and details with Docker that you can use, but I think this is a good starting point from where you can build on. So with that, I'm going to stop this video, and I think we have covered the basic concept of Docker with Spring Framework. In one of the later videos, probably 4 or 5 videos down the line, we will be talking about Kubernetes along with Docker, and these things, if you remember at that point in time, they will be very useful. So for now, if you like this video, please hit subscribe, hit on notification bell icon, and share it with your friends. Keep an eye on this channel. I will try to post videos every week, couple of times. And with that, thank you for watching this video. Bye bye. Peace.